Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities of Music. Today, a band that we thought was done for good is back. Panic at the Disco, Vices and Virtues. Some of you guys out there, you're a little snobby, and you say that you're not going to watch us, or you're not going to watch us if we review stuff like Panic at the Disco, Threecreation. Come on, love us, because we like doing all music, and anything that gets buzz or hype or anything like that, we're going to review, because quite honestly, I'm not scared of music. I'm going to listen to it all, because some of the best things, the best albums I've found have been albums that, you know, typically people who are into an indie music scene, like I was in the past before VIMTV started, those have been the most rewarding listens to me. Now, I will go as far as to say, just right now, so you know, Vices and Virtues is not that album for me.
Nor for I.
Yeah, I don't think either Tom or I were really too big on this album, but I will let Tom just go off on this one, because this guy.
Well, you know, Panic at the Disco, I mean, this is their third album, but half their band quit. You've got, I believe, their main vocalist, Brendan Urie, and their drummer. And so you don't get the guitar edge. I mean, there's still guitars on this album, but you don't get that edge that their first album had, but you also don't get that actually quite good kind of indie sounding guitar that Pretty Odd had. I mean, this is way closer to their first album than Pretty Odd. And that's actually why the group members split, because the two that left said, you know, we want to do kind of more of the stuff that was happening on Pretty Odd, and Brendan and the drummer were kind of like, we want to go back to this other direction, so they parted ways. And it doesn't do it for me. This just doesn't do it for me. This is not, I just feel like this sound, at least for the sound that's on most of these tracks, is just unnecessary. It's that dance pop, and not that dance pop's bad, but just the way they do it, there's nothing new about this. They're not bringing anything new to the table. It's just, I mean, how many songs... When I listen to too many songs that are based on sound, I just go crazy. And that's like the first 6 tracks on this album are. And I'm like, oh my god, I can't take it. And the lyrics in general are just horrible. Then you get to track 7. Track 7 is a ballad kind of acoustic track, which is, I mean, every album, even like in this genre, or even like, I mean, Chevelle even has their cliche acoustic tracks per album. I actually found that song to be very good. And from there, to the end of the album, I liked a lot better. But still, so there's like, you know, there's 6 of the tracks that I pretty much hated, and then 4 tracks that I'm like, this is acceptable. So, you know, where they average out for me, is still not all that desirable, but there's worse music out there.
I think that you can really tell that the guitarist is the one that left. And Tom and I were just talking about this before we turned the camera on, where their first album was very poppy, but had that kind of early 2000s punk rock feel to it, still Fall Out Boy-esque. Then Pretty Odd had a little bit more of that indie. They were going after Sgt. Pepper feel, a little bit poppier still, because that's who Panic at the Disco is. And then this one, with the lack of the guitar talent in the band now, Vices and Virtues is very much a pop record. I get a lot of David Bowie and even Elton John influence in this. I do. And it's just that with like really kind of almost to the point of tacky production, as Tom was getting at. And now, Tom, I liked the first 2 tracks. I thought that they were catchy and a lot of cool. I actually think that this album is actually I think the album title, first of all, is excellent. Vices and Virtues. I think that there are a lot of vices on here of Panic at the Disco, and I think that this album also shows a lot of their good qualities. And one of which is that I think these guys are actually decent songwriters. Now I want to make a point, because this is something that often gets misconstrued on our show. To us, there's a difference between songwriting and song structures. You can break songwriting out into different pieces, and song structures to me I'm going to just go out and say it. All of these tracks are verse, chorus, Bieber, chorus. And I say this, and I pound this in, if you do that on every track on your album, it is going to be a predictable, bland piece of shit. And this is that. Now, when you get to that level of predictability, you got to do something to change it up. Now, Panic at the Disco tried. They tried. Track 7, they put in an acoustic track. It's still predictable, and it's not as reliant on that big chorus. But every other track on this album has a big, solid chorus. Now, they do a lot of really cool production effects, adding in sound effects to match the lyrics, which I'll get to in a second. But that's kind of that's a very poppy production wise trick to do, and it works fairly well. It makes the songs kind of more interesting. But the choruses in general are very simple, bland, unoriginal, and actually I think they kind of take a step backwards in the choruses of the song. I got kind of mixed feelings on the song. I kind of like the first 2 tracks. I feel like there's a big trough in the middle of the album where it just goes really electronic, and up until track 7, tracks 3 through 6 are just a little too much for me. I think it was a little too over the top, predictable, poppy, and honestly, I don't think it adds a lot of value. I think it's going to skip tracks. I definitely wanted to skip tracks. Track displacement's never good. Overall, I think that you're going to find better stuff out there. If you're interested even in this sort of music, check out Janelle Monáe's The Arc Android. If you're interested into kind of a poppy, dancey vibe that is a good album all the way through. But one other thing that really bothered me, Tom, is the lyrics.
Oh, yeah. They're just...
And I am a little sensitive towards lyrics. If I find lyrics I really like, I really love the song. And if I find lyrics I really hate the song. And several times on this album, I really, really hated the lyrics. I'm going to specifically point the last track out, where he says, ever since we met, I only shoot up with your perfume. Oh my God. Oh my God. I literally cannot listen to the last track. And when the lyrics are that bad, it ruins a part of the music. It actually distracts you from the listen.
Another thing that really bothered me was that they have, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the ends of tracks, they'll have these kind of these artsy kind of string intros and outros. And the thing is, yeah, those sound cool by themselves, but I'm like, why didn't you incorporate some of that into the actual song?
Right.
Just throwing it at the beginning or end of a song doesn't make the rest of the song better.
Right.
It just kind of sits there by itself. It doesn't add to anything.
I do think, though, that it adds a little bit of variety to where you're not getting that all the time. It makes it overall, as an album, a little bit more listenable. These guys are keen on the album listen. I think that this album is actually quite well albumized. I honestly think that they tried. It's just that that some of the styles that they were using just didn't work out. And I feel like they were too stuck in a formula. And I feel like when artists do that, it really hinders their creative ability. And here, I just don't feel like it's executed well. Yeah. And I know it's played an effect on both of our scores. I'm giving this a 63.
I'm going 52.
Yeah, you really got burned by this, which is fine. I mean, there's sometimes going to be inherent bias in music. That's what we're all about. What did you guys think about this one? I mean, if you were brave enough, first of all, to listen to this new Panic at the Disco album, I want to know what your thoughts were. Is this something that and by the way, I also want to disclaim, you guys that like Panic at the Disco, Tom and I both liked Pretty Odd. I wasn't a fan of their first album, and Tom, I'm assuming you weren't either.
I'm kind of on the fence about it.
On the fence?
Yeah.
So I mean, I really have nothing against the band. Music is music, guys. If you like it, then you don't need anybody else to justify your opinion. You liking it is enough. Just be able to explain yourself a little bit. That's all we're trying to do here, is talk about it. So tell us what you thought at www.velocitiesofmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.